One of the minor prophets, Micah, was speaking on behalf of God to God's people. Micah is only 7 chapters long, but there is a lot packed into that 7 chapters. And as Denise alluded to, there is a passage in chapter 6 that we will hear today. It's verses 6 through 8, and we hear these words for us this morning. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? May we pray together. Holy One, may the words of my mouth and meditations of all our hearts be acceptable and pleasing to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I'm going to start off today with one word: better. We can treat the planet better. We can respond to injustices better. We can have better relationships. We can have a better equity for all people we encounter. We can have better attitudes. We can have better behaviors. And all this, if it's going to be better, it's the only thing that's going to lead us to a better world. The word Micah is translated a life like God's, or a life like God, which is an interesting translation. Just the prophet's name is a life like God. I mean, my life has to be like God. That's the very understanding of the word Micah itself. Micah lived in an interesting, turbulent time. The north and the south of Israel, and what we call Israel and Palestine, all that was in upheaval. There was a sense that people, if they just worshiped well enough, that was enough for God's people. But Micah's message was saying that worship is not enough. If we want a better world, it's not just about faithful worship. Worship is hollow unless there is a robust concern for social justice. The two go hand in hand with one another. We come to worship on Sundays, and do we sit idle until next Sunday? Hopefully the experience on Sunday morning is a catalyst. It's a catalyst to get out, go do something, go be a part of the very nature of God's character in the world that makes a difference in the world. And not that we ourselves think, well, I'm going to do this. I can solve these problems. God's people together, bound together with one another, have the opportunity to interweave our gifts with other people's gifts to somehow make some imprint of possible change to happen in the world. Micah believed it. In a world that was in upheaval, in a world that was filled with war, of distancing people from one another and saying certain people should or should not be included, Micah is saying, well, the world's gone to hell in a handbasket. I guess it's just the way things are. No, Micah decided to offer a future story that was possible that we could live into. If there's not a future imagination of what we can become, how can we actually ever get there? We just like, well, we're just going to stumble into some positive future? We have to imagine a future in front of us that's equitable, that's healthy, that's whole, that's justice-oriented, and we have to kind of paint that picture in front of us before we're ever going to move that direction. Otherwise, we're just ambling in the dark. William Sloane Coffin, who was a preacher at Riverside Church in New York, said, if every person of faith were to live into the actual word of unity that they profess, if they implemented the unity they profess, then the future is potentially a bright place to live in. Now, for William Sloane Coffin, unity is such an interesting word. Unity does not mean uniformity. Doesn't mean everybody looks the same, behaves the same, acts the same. Unity is celebrating the diversity of all of who we are under the umbrella of unity. That means everyone's included in that definition of unity. But William Sloane Coffin says, you look out at the world today, and we don't look very united. We look different with the skin tones and the color of our skin. We look different in terms of our economic class, of who has and who doesn't have, and those that are considered upper class or middle class or lower class or different socioeconomic classes. There seems to be a disparity of income, disparities of opportunities, the disparity of who can do what in our world. And he said there's disparities about our understanding of orientation of our sexuality and how we understand that, and how that's lived out, and different opinions of what's right and wrong, and all those understandings of sexuality. And goodness gracious, we know there's a wide diversity of age, from someone that's a newborn till the time they almost give their last breath, the diversity of someone's age and what they can or cannot do, what they're allowed to do or not able to do in the world. And there's something about how we identify ourselves in terms of our gender and how that has changed, and how we understand the nature of identifying gender. And then we have people of different abilities, and how our eyes can separate people by abilities of those that have, maybe we seemingly have lesser abilities because they can't see, or they can't walk, or they don't have speech. And we make some kind of boundaries between ourselves and others just based on ability, or even the way people think. People that think more concretely and directly, and people think that more abstractly and metaphorically and less literally about things. If unity becomes what we define unity to be, then we often leave people out. And William Sloane Coffin says that word unity, if we really profess the word unity, it's God's understanding of unity and not our own. And when I think about all these differences that William Sloane Coffin talked about, all these diversity factors in our society, it reminded me a lot of our Shalom statement, if you remember that correctly. We welcome all people, regardless of race and class and sexual orientation and age and gender identity and ability and thought. That we are verbalizing a dream God has for the world, an imagination of what society might be like if it was a little bit different than the way other people would define the world to be and how it should be in our day and time. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Many of us are kind of waiting for that arc to bend. I mean, sometimes we think the pendulum has swung so back the other way. We're wondering if the arc is bending the wrong direction. And we sit back and we wait for the arc to bend. We're selling ourselves short. We are part of the bending. We are the people that do the bending of the arc of justice. It doesn't happen waiting for someone else to do it. We're part of the solution of this arc bending toward the way that God imagines the world to be. 7 years ago, June 17th, 2015, Young man walked into a church in South Carolina, an AME church, ended up killing 9 people, shooting 9 people at AME church in Charleston, South Carolina. It's Juneteenth weekend 7 years ago. The daughter of a woman that was murdered in that shooting wrote a book entitled Such a Time as This. And she is the daughter of a mother that was killed, the daughter of a church that she loved, living in a world filled with all kinds of hate and remorse about how other people's perceptions of unity might play out. In about chapter 10 or 11 in her book, she puts a challenge out to the church. What is the church doing about justice? Sharon Risher, who writes this book, is an advocate, and it's no surprise, she is an advocate for gun safety. She is an advocate against gun violence after seeing it firsthand with her mother having been killed in the middle of a Bible study in her church. Where is the church these days, she said. Oftentimes the church becomes the church and they feel safe in their places of worship. They feel safe in their places of Bible study. They feel safe in their places of fellowship. And she said, my mom felt safe in the church, and yet she was murdered in the church. If the arc of the moral universe is going to bend toward justice, we have to be part of the solution. We have to be part of the bending. We have to be part of the response that happens. We got glimmers of that hope this weekend. And we had people kind of all over the place this weekend. It was kind of exciting to see where people were this weekend. We had a cluster of volunteers down in Gardner at a Pride event in Gardner. Second year, Gardner, Kansas, having a Pride event. St. Andrew was there. We're the only church that had a booth and was present at that setting yesterday. And got to be present and visit with people and saying, we are a place that is welcoming. We are a place that provides a place for people just to simply be, to lead, and not have a barrier. Oh, we want you here as a member, but we're not going to let you do anything. How many churches have scars and pains of people from the LGBT community because they're welcome but not really welcome? And to offer an alternative message of unity that's grander. We had people at Overland Park downtown yesterday at the open pavilion area celebrating a racial justice support, celebrating Juneteenth, celebrating freedom of people that shouldn't have been enslaved in the first place. We had people at Prairie Village that had a Juneteenth celebration, food trucks and entertainment and people celebrating racial justice. We had people from this church watching online at Washington, D.C. as William Barber preached a prophetic message about equity in our world, that if we're going to do anything about it, now is the time and now is the place to make change possible in our world. I think back to Micah. To be like God. The passage, as Denise shared, didn't say justice, kindness, and humility. There were qualifiers in front of each of those. Do kindness, or do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with God. You looked at our artwork on the cover today, done by Daphne Smith, one of our own in the church, did the artwork for us today. I love the imagery of this. At the very top of the image, you have the scales of justice, and they are bending. They are bending toward justice. Loving kindness, it's not just kindness, it's not just hearts. They're hearts that are exploding, moving out. And we have humility of footsteps walking. April Johnson, who heads up the reconciliation racial justice ministry of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ said at the very beginning of the march yesterday in Washington, D.C., we're going to be praying a lot today, not so much with our mouths, but with our feet. I started off the sermon with one word: better. Better care for our planet. Better responses to injustice. Better relationships. Better attitudes. Better behaviors. We know it's true. We believe it in our hearts. We believe it in our souls. If Micah can dream it, if Micah can imagine it, if St. Andrew can dream it, if St. Andrew can imagine it, we can do better.